And welcome back, everybody. Yet again, it's time to visit rainy, humid, warm September New York City in 1933, September 9th to be exact, where we have our crowd of intrepid investigators dusting themselves off. Patching themselves up and generally drying themselves off, having moved the SS Gabrielle from its original mooring next to what remains of their large warehouse down to Pier 66. And so, as we're at a new pier, we might as well walk down and see who we have. Starting off for a change with Valentina.
Hello, I'm Nathan, and I'm playing Valentina Rousseau, the intrepid investigating reporter.
Dr. Wigglesworth.
Thank you. Dr. Wigglesworth here, Harvard, mineralogy, glaciology, petrology.
Former Dr. Tremblay.
Yeah, I am Roger Tremblay, physician, former physician, trying to get back into it, it looks like. Trying not to kill people, but it's been pretty tough so far.
Well, at least nobody's died on your watch quite yet. Not for the lack of trying by the rest of the party. And glad to have them back in their new digs. Big Sue's.
Hey, this is Big Sue's, musher from Iditarod Way, and just ready to get out on that ice.
And then, of course, uh, finally, but by no means least, Dr. Stoddard.
All right. Paleontologist, biologist, grumpy old man here. Uh, Definitely not feeling all of the shenanigans, and this is just unreasonable for what we're doing. What's the world coming to?
So we return, as it was, to the SS Gabrielle at her new moorings with the leaders of the Starkweather Moor expedition uh, desperately trying to um, rediscover where they might quickly lay their hands on the various equipment that perished in the warehouse fire, which has led to a delay in departure of at least 2 days. And the last thing that happened, I believe, was that a note was delivered to the members of the group from a Nicholas Rohr. So campaign note 14 with an invite to call upon him at your convenience. Now, some of you may remember Mr. Rouge as the unfortunate gentleman that you managed to rescue out of the hands of some hoodlums in a warehouse further upriver. a few days ago.
So is this the next day from when the fire was?
Yes, the fire was on the evening of the 8th.
So I would gain back 1 hit point for resting.
Correct.
Okay.
And I believe I don't know that we rolled um, the medics other than Roger's first aid, but you would have gotten professional treatment as well. So I would say go ahead and roll a d4 for that.
And do we know exactly what we lost in the fire? Is there any way to?
Um, yes, it was general pieces of cargo, but most notably the tents, the spare engines for the larger Boeing planes, and the wooden skis for the planes.
Got it.
And I think we were moving to a new dock and having everything delivered there now. And
That
that's
is
what the delay
correct.
was, right? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So yes, you were towed a few docks downriver to a spare berth at number 66. Um,
And
uh,
Nicolas wants to speak with us.
yes.
Is this one of those things where we finally don't split the party and we all head on over to the same place to talk to the same guy?
Wouldn't that be confusing?
I would love to have a mix of muscle and mind.
I'm here for it.
Let's pay him a visit.
And you make your way down to the Netherlands Hotel, which is on 55th Street and 6th Avenue, I think, I recall. So just off the park, it's a hotel in the European style. So big marble foyer. You walk in, present yourself at the front desk, show them your invite. A quick phone call is placed up to Mr. Rausch, and before you know it, you find yourselves exiting from the wrought brasswork elevator on the fourth floor, and suite 410 is just a little ways down the corridor. Um, you your knock is answered by a solid-looking, dark-haired man in his early 30s, probably, um, speaking educated English, but with a pronounced Russian accent. Um, you're led into the sitting room of the suite, which is large and airy with thick carpets on the floor, cut crystal overhead, and you see Nicholas Roche seated at a small table with several chairs. There's a covered dish and ornate coffee service set out to one side, There's two easels across from him, each with a canvas. The first is clearly a work in progress, with a partial landscape roughly daubed in ochre and brown. The second is a finished painting of unnerving beauty, a huge fortress looming up against towering mountains, the peaks like jagged fangs, sharp, deep shadows against paler colors, the canvas hinting at immeasurable passage of time and ancient secrets hidden within. Mr. Rorich himself quite clearly still carries the marks from his abduction. He's got a black eye and taped up lacerations. That's what I was looking for. And he generally looks about as dreadful as Valentina probably feels. Welcome, he says. It was good of you to come. This is my son George. Please smoke if you wish. I would. It is perhaps a bit early for drinks, but do make yourself at home. Or if you haven't eaten, please do partake. It may be that it will take some time for you to hear what I have to say.
Valentina finds a place to get comfortable.
Is there coffee among the offerings?
There is indeed a large urn of fresh warm coffee. Yes, and
You said. Go ahead. Sorry.
and it is indeed very easy for Valentina to find somewhere comfortable. Um, this is definitely the type of suite that has comfortable written all over it.
Thank you for your hospitality. I'm sure we can make ourselves comfortable. Please, tell us what you have to say when you're ready. Wigglesworth will take a seat amongst the crew.
Suze walks over towards the spread of food. You said it's too early for you to drink. Is there any issue with me having some?
Oh no, not at all. Please do feel free. And he indicates the bar tray by one of the bookcases that has a number of bottles of various clear liquids,
Suze.
crystal tumblers, that sort of thing.
Okay. I'll pile a plate up with some bacon and eggs and grab a mug as well as one of the bottles off of the bar cart and go find myself a place to sit in the corner as well.
And I think Roger's just going to kind of look over his cuts and bruises with that medical eye that he likes to look at things. But at the mention of that there's an alcohol tray, he certainly just kind of looks up and he's like, yeah, and then kind of wanders over and grabs something for himself as well.
You'll have to excuse my friends here, Mr. Rorick. We've had a very stressful 72 hours.
It has indeed been an eventful few days, and to that end, yet again, my sincere thanks for your timely intervention. I fear I may not be sitting here today if it were not for your bravery. But as you know, I came to New York on charitable business, raising money for the relief of starving men and women around the world. Um, and it was whilst engaged in the preparations for this journey that I received a letter and a package from my friend, probably known to, well, at least some of you, Professor William Dyer, who has been living in the South Pacific for the past year or so. The letter urged me to go to New York on his behalf to beg Starkweather and Moore as strongly as possible to cancel the plans for their expedition. As a last resort, I was to give them the enclosed sealed manuscript that was in the letter. And as I was bound for Manhattan anyway, I agreed. Um, the manuscript apparently was Dyer's account of the true facts and the true fate of the 3031 Miskatonic expedition. He seemed to think that if there was no other way to convince Starkweather and Moore, that his account would be persuasive. I arrived in New York, and over 2 days I tried sending letters to Starkweather and leaving messages by telephone, but all were seemingly ignored. So, as you know, I went to see Miss Lexington. I was rather taken aback by the news of her departure. I had no idea that the young Acacia was making her own preparations. But I decided to take Dyer's plea to her in the hopes of a more receptive audience. Uh, I I've been a friend of the family for some time, so I was at least known to the young lady. I made an appointment with her secretary, but when I went to the house, manuscript in hand, I was intercepted on the walkway by the man you saw, who showed me a gun, asked my cooperation, and assured me that if I was helpful, I would not be hurt. Um, the rest of that tale, well, you know as well as I. Sadly, I know little of the details of the manuscript and had not opened it to read it. And of course, I am unable to contact Dyer uh, from here, or at least within reasonable time. The mail boat to Papawa is not the most reliable. All of this brings me to a reason I asked to see you today. Um, I had hoped to have one more opportunity at least to speak with young Acacia, but she refused to answer my calls after the abduction, and she has now, as we know, sailed south. Um, so it is with some reluctance, but I cannot help but think that she herself must have had something to do with the attack. There's a few things that makes me think this way. Uh, the first is that the gentlemen that you dealt with were not simple hoodlums. They were clearly not interested in money. They wanted the manuscript, and they insisted upon learning Dyer's location. The only people that knew about Dyer's message, apart from myself, were the leaders of the two expeditions, Starkweather Moore and Lexington. I spoke to no one else about it before the assault. How I failed to see how my assailants knew who I was, where to find me, and that I carried the manuscript if someone had not told them. And given that I was unable to contact Starkweather and Moore, I feel it unlikely that they were the source, which leaves Acacia.
And you were there at a scheduled appointment to
Yes.
see her.
Um, Also, I am quite certain that the attackers were German. Um,
And what makes you say that?
oh, just apart from the accents, they had a. I overheard them conversing with each other in the vehicle on our drive to the warehouse, and they were speaking German to each other in the manner of one fluent in the language. It was very colloquial, quite colourful. Now, the one thing that confused me at the time, but and he touches his stitched up head, is that during my in, interrogation, if you would call it that, with the assailants, or by the assailants, they kept asking me about Pym's book, which at the time I could not make sense of. However, having thought about it since then, I think I know what they meant, finally, as ever, far too late to be useful. Um, it Once upon a time, myself and P.W. Lexington, Acacia's father, were quite close friends, but we fell out in the early 20s. But I kept an interest in the family. Um, Now, P.W.'s death in 21 was called a suicide, and his name was linked to a number of shady deals and financial scandals. Um, but nothing, I believe, was ever proven. But there was another story that he was murdered over a book. You see, on the day of the suicide, PW had announced a private auction at which he intended to sell a few personal possessions of value. He died before the auction could take place. One of the items to be sold was a unique manuscript that could not be found after his death and, to my knowledge, has not been seen since. This was uh, Edgar Allan Poe's The Narrative of Arthur Gordon Pym of Nantucket. Um, it was serialized in 1837 in 25 chapters, but its conclusion was never published. Lexington was quite proud of having found a complete manuscript. Apparently, this differed quite strikingly from the published edition, containing 4 extra chapters. Now, I never saw the book, but PW was proud of owning it, and he believed it to be a true account of travels in the Antarctic. It seems to matter so little now. Someone stole the book then, and someone stole my friend's work too. I must hope it was merely greed in both cases. Otherwise, I do not mean to imply that these events are related, dear friends, but they prey upon my thoughts as though they were. If those who question me wanted information about the Pym story, then it must be of some concern to them, but I cannot imagine why. I do worry for Miss Lexington. It seems inevitable that she's involved in some way with those who kidnapped me and stole the manuscript, but I just cannot find it in my heart to believe that she's completely responsible. But mayhaps she has fallen in with bad company, possibly National Socialists. She's flirted with their kind before. I suspect that Acacia is going to team up with the Basmaya Falcon expedition. But that is more from just the coincidence of their departure being at such a coincidental time.
Out of character question. That's one of the one of the expeditions we knew about getting ready, correct?
Yes.
Stoddard kind of makes a harumphing noise over his coffee as he's listening to the details and what it's kind of laying out.
Valentina's taking notes, and a lot of this is matching up with some of the stuff we already knew, and we're getting a little more information, but she's taking notes right now.
Well, I understand what you're saying, that your friend Dyer didn't want us to go, and I don't know about my cohort here, but this is a big job. There's a lot of money involved. I can't just skip this paycheck. This will keep me afloat for a year or two after this job. So unfortunately, I can't not go.
I do quite understand, and with the manuscript now missing, Miss Acacia beyond the reach of my powers of persuasion, and possibly an enemy to me. Starkweather and more unwilling to see or hear me. Um, I have to ask: will you help a man out in his search for understanding and find out what Acacia Lexington and her German friends are planning in the far south? And can I ask you to do your best to see that she comes home safely? Um, for all that has happened, I still have my cares for the family. Please, my friends, be my hands and eyes. I may not go with you, except perhaps in spirit, but I cannot sit idly by, and you are my best chance. Dare I place my hopes in your hands?
I think it would serve us all of our best interests to ascertain what Miss Lexington is intending, if for the success and safety of our own and other missions alone. Kind of, you know, I do not know what will happen in the ice, but I do not believe in intentionally leaving people behind if it can be prevented.
Then this man can sleep soundly tonight. My thanks. As I said, it does mean a great deal.
We'll do what we can, but it's not about the money. I mean, the opportunities here are for not just us, but for the future. Think of the scientific profoundness that could come from this expedition if it were successful, and not to mention the righting of previous wrongs, which shall be left nameless for the time being. Even still, we accept. We shall do what we can. Lives are our greatest concern, and if Miss Lexington is getting in over her head on things, well, it may provide both some clarity and some reason for concern.
Well said, sir, and as I said, yes, much appreciated. Now, I fear that I have perhaps kept you longer than my doctors would advise me to keep company, but I will wish you the very best of good fortune upon your journey, and I shall follow it with the deepest of interest.
Best wishes to
Before
you,
we
Mr. Rorick. Take care.
before we leave, could I would Valentina would ask him if he's willing to pose for a photograph next to his painting.
Oh, absolutely.
Thank you, sir.
Suze,
Uh,
that's your cue to get out of the hooch.
Never.
so I would ask Valentina to make an art photography roll.
Oh. Not terrible. Well, no, it is correct. That was a success then, I believe, wasn't it?
Yep, yep,
Yes.
That was, yes.
yep.
His distant relations are flickering the lights.
Yes, it is, even though it's. There's something about the starkness of the shadows and the brightness of the snows in the painting that in a black and white photograph become even more um, enticing and mysterious.
I
But
thank him again before I leave.
that'll of course come out in the what once things are developed back at the ship. And so yes, you politely eventually take your leave, and to Valentina's point, Um, you are reminded, or Valentina reminds you of the pieces that you found about both the father and the daughter of the Lexingtons in the various newspaper archives that Valentina was able to dig into earlier in the week. I'll mention, just because it's been a little while, real calendar time, that one of the pieces of information that one of the articles included was some details about the um, the book that was supposed to be auctioned, and that it had been provided to PW by the Bosley auction house. Um, so with it now being about 2:30 in the afternoon, um, the the sun is starting to peer out from behind the clouds that are streaming over Central Park. Um, Still perhaps a bit warm, but it's turning out to be quite a nice day in New York City.
Have we already ordered the resupply?
Yes, Dr. Moore and Professor Starkweather have seen to that. And with it being mostly the aircraft parts, they're readily available down at the airfield in New Jersey, so it doesn't. Um, there's not. There's not expected to be any issues as far as getting them within a couple of days.
Starting to think it might have been those guys with how much we have to grease their palms.
I don't know if I asked this before, but I'm assuming that since this is a scientific expedition, that there's not like weapons or anything being brought on it, correct?
There is a considerable amount of weaponry, if I recall. Um,
I know there was explosives.
yeah, there's explosives.
Yes.
The
For science.
There's usually a couple rifles on an expedition like this.
yeah.
Hmm.
Let's see.
Flare guns.
Pistols.
Yeah, probably some pistols.
Number three.
I think that kind of gets to my next question too, which is how can we go about investigating this explosion that happened? Is there an investigative team already on it?
We did catch
Uh,
that one guy, so
yes.
we'd have to get
Uh,
to what's his name, the private eye guy.
or the Detective Sergeant JJ.
Yeah. Should we try to talk to him to see if he's willing to share? But so far he's been very not sharing.
Hmm. is a private eye, you said?
No, he's a NYPD detective.
Oh, but he doesn't want to share, huh?
Well, he wasn't particularly forthcoming with information about the assailants on Nicholas Rorish, but that could also just have been him holding suspicions about to what extent you all were involved and on what side.
Well, he's got to do his job. We got to do ours. Presumably, he's overseeing this investigation for the dock explosion, correct?
Um, that is as yet unknown. He
Got it.
was he was certainly part of the multitude of police that showed up at the dock and was one of the uh, police detectives that took Jerry Polk
Okay.
in. Um,
So we
and
saw him there
we
at the
know that
time.
yeah, we know that Valentina had um, the backstory on Jerry Polk because she remembered writing the article last time he got nabbed for something. Um,
I don't think they're going to let us in on anything. Maybe we could catch a slip of the tongue, but we're also not going to be here much longer, so we ought to try something.
Well, it was some of the info we had was it was that guy was going to meet a red-haired person in the park or something to get paid, but I don't
Okay,
think there was very much for us to go on there.
right.
yeah, the so-called Doyle.
I mean, it tells us that he was getting paid, presumably one-time job, but yeah, little else. I'm just wondering if it's safe to order these parts from New Jersey, or if it's safe to set sail from New York. It's hard to wrap my head around all this. So much at once. We haven't even set off yet. I wonder.
Well, the issue wasn't the suppliers from Jersey so much as miscommunication, and they are just right there. So if we can't get it in this city, it's probably our best bet.
Ah, you're right, of course. I'm just. It's too early for the headache I have.
Maybe a little hair of the dog.
It's too early for that, too, but I appreciate the sentiment.
Do what I can. I'm just ready to get on the sea. Getting antsy here in the city.
As am I, especially with what's happened lately. I suppose we might as well make our way to the police station, unless someone has a better idea.
Should we perhaps be visiting Mrs. Lexington? I believe we've tried previously to talk to her. Is it now the time?
Well, she's the ship that left, I believe. So,
So
I was
we've
under that impression as well, that she wasn't available.
It was indeed her ship that
So
left.
reaching out to Jersey, or do we have any other plans?
I mean, Roger, if you're suggesting a B&E, I am all for that. To see what's
Valentina,
there.
you're muted.
Oh,
no, I heard him. I
I
think you're
heard him just
having.
fine.
Yep, I heard
okay.
you. I wasn't suggesting that.
Oh,
Valentine,
I
I think you
misheard then.
have the wrong person. Um,
I mean,
would you like to perhaps? I mean, perhaps we could speak to some of her friends or colleagues. I think that might be a little more appropriate. I'm not getting caught up in any more of your shenanigans, Valentina. I see what you're up to.
so no
We
fun is
should
what you're saying.
Valentina, I'm absolutely here for your shenanigans.
let's try to keep them to a balanced minimum. In the meantime, Miss Lexington's actions certainly seem to indict her of some participation here. Her leaving early would, of course, support that case. Her head start will no doubt be valuable.
Well, maybe she left something at her home that we can check out if we're gonna perform some shenanigans.
Well, some hard evidence to connect her to these crimes could put a twist on things if she does return. Who knows what's going on through her mind? However, with only a day or so left, I'm not sure it's enough for us to solve the case. We may have to trust this Sergeant JJ with the case.
You're right. I hate that you're right, but you are right.
Sometimes I feel just the same way. No, I think we may do our best to just tighten up our belts a notch and prepare ourselves doubly for the shipment in Jersey. We'll have our boys on board, ready to load the remaining supplies at the last minute, and we can set off. At least that'll be my suggestion to the captain.
Sounds good to me too.
And keep our eyes out for any Germans, I suppose, is the word of the day.
Speaking of the Germans, Valentina's half tempted to try to pick up another firearm on the way back to the ship. She hasn't quite decided whether she is or not. Would I legally be able to buy a firearm in New York since I'm from Massachusetts? I'm not sure of the
Oh,
legalities there.
no problem whatsoever. At least in 1933.
I was gonna say it's like legal what?
I
Yeah, you can
mean,
buy a gun here. Do you have money?
if you're asking about a gun, Suze will hand you a Bowie knife as big as your forearm and offer that if you'd like.
What?
The comment from the side from the person on the couch is, "What year's the set in?" 1933. Yes, 33.
Yes.
A very emphatic yes. You can get firearms.
Oh yeah. If you got cash, we got guns. Kind of
It's
on that
probably easier to
note,
buy the gun than it is to buy the booze.
That
definitely,
is true.
Oh, absolutely.
we should consider getting a small stow of firearms if we're going into something like Mr. Rorick was telling us. We don't know who really is against us. We may want to keep personal safety measures handy.
I understand that. Maybe we got to get ourselves some hog legs.
Yeah.
Are there aphorisms for everything?
Damn
Yes.
near.
When you get into the study, it's just like when you're studying anthropology and cultures. There's always aphorisms and metaphors, analogies. It's just how language works. It's like trying to read Egyptian. It's the
Big
vowels.
Suze, I'd love to give you a tour of our museum sometime. Comparative zoology down at Harvard. You'd love it.
I would. That sounds absolutely amazing.
It's an open offer for all of you, should we ever make it back there in a reasonable time.
I'm sure we will. We'll see it next spring.
So would it be possible for Valentina to pick up a 38 on the way back to the ship
Oh
with
yeah,
some ammo?
yeah.
Okay.
I think that's the plan here too. Yeah, let's make a trip to the gun store and pick up at least a firearm for each of us. We got to remember that weight is going to be critical, but still something.
I mean, it matters what the cost is. Suze does not have a lot of cash, so she may have to have someone else foot her the bill at first. But
I
Hmm.
think this pretty much taps me out for cash.
What's your credit rating,
Unless I
Suits?
9.
Oh boy. Okay. Yeah, they might not sell 22 pistols that don't work.
so
It is worth noting that some of the vendors aren't quite legal too, so that's an aspect. But Stoddard can help a little bit more than Sue's probably with the cost of acquisition.
Yeah, let me see what my credit rating is, and we can ask
Stoddard's at
Keeper
50.
staff in here what he thinks.
if you guys are picking up your own firearms, I can just trade my 22 in for a 38. They're the same cost. I was thinking about
Hmm.
keeping a second one around if no one else was going to buy one, but if everybody is, there's no reason for me to do that.
Yeah, I think we should all have one gun. I think a backup might be a luxury on this expedition that we can't afford,
Well,
but
I plan on
I think
stealing a
one is
flare gun at
sensible.
some point, so
Uh, Stefan,
He'll
we,
have
we we
access to
determined
that.
that there's rifles in the supplies, right?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Uh,
They're kept. They're kept in a rifle safe in the chief's cabin,
Right. This will be the luxury that the senior
al-
staff can afford.
along with the expedition booze.
I don't think Roger is going to. What are the? Why are we buying these rifle? Why are we buying these guns to shoot people? What?
Germans.
It
Uh,
seems there are those, perhaps among us or ahead of us, as it were, that have ill intent and use subterfuge, and I think each of us should be personally equipped to defend ourselves should the need arise.
I
I
mean,
It's
fauna wise, we may run into polar bear. I think penguin are down there too. I'm not for sure how toothy they can be.
Well,
they're
I'd
not
much
that big
prefer to
though, are
use a
those
they?
rifle if we meet a polar bear.
those will be accounted for by the rifles, but this is in case we run into something truly unexpected.
I think I'll just have to pass on this. I don't think I can be arming myself with a gun and shooting people like that.
It's a lot easier than you'd expect.
I hope it doesn't come to it, but also if we are dealing with wildlife and something was to break into a tent, I'd rather have something that is easily wieldable within the tent if there is a hungry wild animal coming at me.
Oh,
We
I'm
have
I'm
seen a lot of variables, Mr. Tremblay. Mr.
uh,
Rorick was one
So,
of them.
so for reference, having just asked the assistant what the cost of a 33 revolver in is in period, um, so the example they give is the Colt single action army model will cost about $30 uh, or so. So it may be that yes comes under at least some people's spending limit.
So the I was going to get a 38, which according to the book costs $25. I was going to
Yep.
trade in my 22, which was $25. So
Okay.
a
Yep.
push there and a box of
The-
ammo for the new
yeah.
one. So
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, box of ammo is cents on the dollar, as it were. So
Mm-hmm.
Stoddard has a credit rating of 50. Do I need to roll, or is that covered?
No, I would say that's covered, if I recall. Yeah, you'll have a spend of probably about $20 or so. So should be fine.
I would like to talk myself into getting it on credit, with the understanding I'll pay them back double on my return.
You'll gladly pay them the price of one hamburger tomorrow for two today. Absolutely. I would say go ahead and make a social roll to see how well.
Okay, let's call this charm. Oh, where are we? All right. Well, I gave it the old college try, but doesn't look like they quite bit this time.
Well, I mean, I could say maybe persuade you to spend 13 luck.
I'm kind of saving that for when the ship blows up again.
I was just about to say.
Yeah.
Look, we get to keep rolling each session. It's fine.
Yeah, what's 13 luck here or there? I was wondering if there's any way to assist Big Suze in her purchase. I'm a 45 credit rating, for example, and I'm looking to purchase a 25 cost weapon. I think
You definitely have the means for it. It may be that you have to dig into that you end up having to write a check against your savings account, essentially. Uh,
okay, yeah, 8 over my credit rating to purchase 2 of these pistols, but I'd like to do something like that if I can for Suze.
yeah, yeah, oh yeah, yeah, oh yeah. No, I mean, yeah, you definitely have the means to do so. It just that it will probably be over um, your ready cash on hand, as it were.
Okay. Well, if I have the time or the means to make it happen, then I'll purchase 2 and I'll give one to Suze.
Absolutely not a problem.
Well, thank
Um,
you, Wigglebutt. That is so nice of you.
But stay safe.
This is a 38, correct?
yes.
Yes, 38 revolver. It's Professor Wigglesworth, but well, you can call me Ed if you like.
All right, Ed. Well, I'll definitely make sure there's always a seat next to me whenever you need it while we're mushing.
Thank you, Suze. I will need to get out there in the field, as it were.
So, for reference, Dr. Wigglesworth's cash on hand is $10. So you've basically ended up writing a check against your your actual bank account as opposed to drawn down
Okay.
rather than. But yeah, but anything less than $10 or a daily sum of $10, you don't even need to keep track of, as it were. So that'll help. So yes, you make your way back towards Dock 66, crossing um, west side of Manhattan, and come back. You get to the warehouse, the roadside warehouse on the dock, where there are two armed stevedore guards. You have to show your ID to be let into the dock itself, and then on the gangplank there is a further is the bosun of the Gabrielle, who also checks your papers before you're let on board. But you make your way back up to your cabins. I imagine that Valentina is going to head upstairs to the you've managed to have one of the closets of the captain's ready room, because that's about the only room, frankly, that has unused closet space, into a dark room, so you can develop the photographs from the day.
Something else that she's going to do before she develops this roll of film uh is get some pictures of her in her uh arctic attire, so she can
Mm-hmm.
develop those, because she's planning on leaving some photos behind to be printed with the story she sends back.
Ooh, nice. Yes.
Smart thinking.
Only the best on board the Gabrielle.
And I might try to sneak like pictures of and I like how I blanked on the names of the people running the show, but pictures of various people that we might have in the stories as well, just as enough photos to make it last.
Are there photos of the dogs? It's very important.
Absolutely.
I remember we took photos, so there should be some. But yeah, that's a good idea.
Yep.
How much longer before the supplies arrive?
The supplies will be arriving uh, tomorrow mid-afternoon or so.
What's the likelihood of things that were actually missing just showing up because it took longer for us to leave? So we get a shipment. Oh, this is supposed to arrive 3 weeks ago. That's where it went.
I
Yeah,
mean,
the good food.
we'll just get down there, intentionally land at someone else's landing point, and steal all the shit from them.
My thought is let's have the crew rostered and roll called that morning, ready for something like an early shipment. Like was just mentioned, we'll get it on board ASAP and then we'll set sail with the captain's approval. I mean, we still have a full day, so that's a lot of time, but we'll get settled. I'll double check inventory. We can assess some damage and get ready for that roll call tomorrow. Might be worth calling Jersey again. Make sure the shipment went through.
Do we want to do any follow up on that auction house that was brought to our attention?
Yeah, we could definitely check
Valentina,
out Bozeman.
do you know anything about them? Has there been anything interesting in the news about them?
That would be up to the keeper letting me roll, I would assume.
I would say you have a decent chance at. I mean, given the time, you could go. The library wrote and go digging in the archives, or maybe more of a persuade or fast talk to have a word with the literary editors at the Times and try and dig for information with them.
Hmm. I'm gonna dig through the archives here and see what we get.
Okay.
That is a hard no. Uh, but that is a role I am willing to push.
Bullshit.
Um,
Oh, absolutely. You're in the midst of the paper archives of the Times. What could possibly go wrong?
uh, absolutely nothing. Here we go.
It's too dark. Light a match and get it real close.
I mean, I was going to say, I mean, what's the worst that could happen? Something explodes and catches on fire?
That is a hard success.
That is
Yeah.
indeed. And you do find um, a story. Actually, you with a hard success, you find a couple of stories. Um, the first one is actually another story on Acacia Lexington, um, November 3rd, 1921. Head bylined "The Young Lady Takes Charge." It's a quite long article that discusses Acacia Lexington's assumption of her father's business after his death. It's exceedingly condescending, suggesting that Acacia should either marry or find a capable and steady man of business to engage and manage the vast fortune. A woman should never try to dabble in the affairs of commerce. Nature has granted her a high place in the scheme of things, a place that man cannot usurp. In return, she should not attempt to claim a position for which she is by nature unfit. And you do also find in the literary section a story describing the literary find of the century, 1919, wherein it mentions that P.W. Lexington has acquired via in a sale at the Bosley's auction house what is believed to be a very rare and hitherto unknown version of the story of Pym of Nantucket. It talks about they have an interview with Frank Bosley, who's the proprietor of the auction house, stating that it was a sale, it was a private estate sale, apparently. Well, actually, not an estate sale. I misspoke. It was it was a private placement auction of goods from a Mr. Stanley Fuchs, apparently, and it has the address of the auction house and so forth.
Well, that could be worth following up on. Let's get our bags packed and head over there.
So time wise, I suspect that it's Now the morning of the 10th. So the question is whether you wish to. The goods isn't due to arrive until like about 2 in the afternoon. So you've got the morning between uh, the various preparations to run over to the auction house. You can have telephoned ahead so that you can essentially have an appointment with Mr. Bosley if you so wish, or you can turn up unannounced as well. I don't know how you want to play it.
Oh, no, no, no. If Wigglesworth can make an appointment, okay. But if there's no appointment, then he can't go. It's just not in his nature.
We don't need an appointment, Eddie. We can go right on over there.
No, no, no. That would be rude.
Rudeness is in the eye of the beholder. You just got to be sweet about it.
Well, we need to make sure that the sailors are roll called, that the captain has what he needs in order to set sail. I mean, we've been waiting for this. What if the shipment arrives early?
You're right. You're right. We're in your city. We'll do it your way. When we get out to the Arctic, though, I decide how we do things.
Oh, me? No, New York isn't my city. Not by a long shot.
Would I still be developing photos, or would I have that done?
Oh, you'd have that done.
Okay.
Yeah, you were able to get that taken care of the on the late afternoon of the 9th, I think. Plenty of time,
Okay.
even with.
While we're out, I will send a stack of photos to my contact at the paper to go along with the stories I write then.
Perfect.
Okay.
Presumably without statuettes of green cephalopods or anything of that ilk.
Not yet.
So you get to see Mr. Bosley, and you find out that it was indeed a private placement from a Stanley Fuchs. He shows you the auction bill, which basically talks about a handwritten manuscript of the book, and without going into um, detail of the text, talks about it in terms of it being the purported original pre-publication copy, including 4 chapters that were hitherto unknown, that lend a whole new slant to the book. And he also shows you a letter that was sent by Stanley Edgar Fawkes to go along with the auction. And that letter is available as note P19. And if somebody would be willing to read that out, or I can give it a go.
I don't see it in there right now, so there it is.
I can do it if you'd like.
I'm still looking.
Oh, I spelled the name right in the notes. Yes. September 4th, 1921, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Dear Mr. Brody, I write to you in regard to your letter of August 28th. It is always unpleasant to hear of an untimely passing, especially of one whom I have had dealings in the past. My business with Percival Lexington having taken place more than 20 years ago, however, I find it difficult to imagine what benefit you may receive from my recollections at this late date. As you know, I'm a collector of antiquities. It was in that capacity that I first purchased the erstwhile Poe manuscript from a fellow collector, a man named Lionel White. Book arrived in good order and proved exactly as promised. I recall that it was unboxed in loose form and that a number of the pages were showing signs of wear. Mr. White had also included a letter summarizing his own researches into the origin of the work. It is clear that he considered it genuine. I found, after some inspection, that I had to disagree. You will be aware, sir, that the narrative of Arthur Gordon Pym differs in several aspects of style from the rest of Mr. Poe's body of work. The manuscript I had acquired was substantially the same as the published work in its first 25 chapters, including those same uncharacteristic usages and turns of phrase. The additional 5 chapters, however, were quite different even from the remainder of the manuscript, in both style and content, and clearly had been written by a different hand. Once this was clear to me, I had no further interest in the work. However clever the fiction, it was evidently not Poe's take, but an homage or an attempted forgery, and thus I sought to recover my purchase price by any means possible. Mr. Lexington bought it eagerly, and I was able to secure a small profit for my trouble. I concealed nothing from Mr. Lexington when he came to examine the manuscript. That is my way of doing business. He drew his own conclusions and was delighted at his purchase, for which I wished him well. As I recall, he was excited by the possibility that the narrative represented an undocumented collaboration rather than original work. I did not seek to dissuade him. Several other collectors inquired about the work. I referred them all to Lexington. There is very little else I can say about the purchase. As to your other question regarding the content of the additional chapters, I fear I can be of little use. I recall that they were unpleasantly speculative, more than unusual, more than usually macabre, and dealt with a tribe of inhuman horrors that dwelt in the Antarctic and practiced human sacrifice. More than that, I cannot say. Wishing you the best of luck in your continuing research, I am sincerely yours, Stanley Edgar Fooch.
Um, and yes, you having uh, basically um, come across the such a tale of barbarous entities. Um, you manage to safely make your way back down towards the ship. Um, with your last few hours of liberty at hand, is there anything else that you wish to do before it's time to pack, lock and load, as it were?
I think Stoddard is definitely agreeing that the concept of tribes of human cannibals in the Antarctic is incredibly fantasy and speculative. It might make for a good pulp novel, but completely unreasonable.
Well, I absolutely need to tend to my dogs for the night, but I don't have anything else on my schedule.
No, let's get back to the ship and take a roll call.
Yeah. You get back to the ship. A roll call is indeed taken, and it is, as one would hope, accurate. I.e., nobody's missing. Nobody appears to be extra.
All right, and now we just wait for the shipment.
And it is even half an hour early. And the four trucks pull up outside the warehouse. The stevedores get busy unloading the large and unwieldy boxes that are lifted into numbers 3 and 4 hold. Um, you do open up the boxes quayside just to confirm that they actually contain what they're supposed to, which indeed they do. And then the boxes are yet again nailed shut for being placed in the hold.
Very good. Well, unless we have assigned stations, I'm going to take one with a view.
Mm-hmm. Well, this is still on the afternoon of the 10th, and not it won't be scheduled to depart until tomorrow morning, with the outgoing tide. But
Curse the weather.
the 11th dawns with high, thin clouds, and because of, or well, possibly despite everyone's continued nervous vigilance, nothing actually happens, particularly during the last 12 hours in port. Um, all of the crew and our investigators have gathered together on board ship overnight for the first time. And finally, late mid-morning, the Gabrielle sets sail. The skies are covered with those thin, high clouds. The sea is choppy. There's an armada of small boats that turn out to watch as the ship salutes the Statue of Liberty as it passes by and continues on alone south into the Atlantic. And we are
Hallelujah.
on board and en route.
Cue the pirates theme.
Red string on map appears. So, quoting from Bird's Journal of 1928, headed southward at last. After years of anticipation and months of preparation, the moon on the water, the breezes whispering adventure ahead, then the storm, the water boiling, and above the wind the calm sound of the ship's bell striking the hour. The wind slackens again to a whisper, and the barely audible chug-chug of the engine feeding man's deep yearning for mobility, carrying us to a new place where wealth and fame and power count for nothing. So, having left harbour on the mid-morning of September 11th, 1933, you start cruising smoothly down the eastern seaboard. The sensation amongst most of you and the crew is one of strange freedom. At last, The journey is underway. Your troubles are behind you, and adventure lies ahead. Despite the many mysteries of the past few days, there's excitement in the air. It's difficult to say who popped the first cork, but about an hour after departure, so as soon as the ship has pretty much passed the 5 mile limit, we see the entire group crowded into the officers' mess. Champagne flows freely. Starkweather and Moore both toast the future and the expedition's good fortune, grinning ear to ear. Peter Sykes entertains the party with old Newfoundland whaler chanties accompanied by spoons and cookpot drums, and offers to teach the words to whoever wants to learn. There's tales of previous great adventures and disasters that have been witnessed. And the fun continues on until sunset when the ship cooks clears the room to begin setting up for dinner. And the ship continues moving smoothly through the Atlantic waters, the rise and fall of the vessel in the waves, while noticeable, is gentle and soothing, accompanied by the continuous faint thrum of the great engines below deck. Everyone is a little wobbly at first, but within a few hours, the motion of the ship seems natural. However, I'm going to ask everybody to make psychology rolls.
Oh, this ain't gonna go well for me.
I can't wait to fail this one. I knew I was going to fail. I still rolled really high. I might go back to physical dice. There's normal failing, and then there's dancing very close to fumbles every time I roll.
So Valentina got a regular success.
Yeah. Valentina is, however, in the midst of this seeming idyll, aware of a more insidious undertone. There's an air of suspicion and almost outright fear from the enlisted men and the crew, particularly towards the scientists and most noticeably Starkweather. It doesn't appear to it doesn't appear amongst the officers, so it's you just get the sense as you're interacting with members of the crew, whether you pass them by on deck or where they're serving you dinner, it's just a little bit off.
That's probably a little sobering for Valentina, so she probably lays off the booze after that, and is kind of just watches the room and uh just kind of keeps an eye on everything.
Absolutely.
This
So
might be
yeah, go ahead.
this might be a bad question. Do we have to roll to see if any of us get seasick?
Fortunately, the weather here in the Atlantic is relatively pleasant, and the Gabrielle is big enough that there's no noticeable roll in the movement. So it's you're perfectly okay. Um, Even the dogs down in the mid deck of hold three are basically quiet. So yeah, all in all, you push southward past Florida and into the clear blue waters of the Caribbean. The southern cold squalls of the North Atlantic get changed out for uh, the air being heavy with moisture, warm and oppressive. And every few days, the rain that comes is just soft and clean. It takes you about a week uh, before you get down towards um, Panama. So in that week, you have one of the most noticeable thing that happens is that a number of the expedition members and crew set up impromptu courses for things that may or may not become useful. And anybody in the party is perfectly uh, at liberty to set up courses as well, should they so wish. So, to give an idea of what's available, there is there's courses on polar survival. There's a course in climb. There's courses on aircraft maintenance and operate heavy machinery. There's a drive dog sled course. There's navigation. There's meteorology.
What was
There's
that last one?
meteorology.
Oh, meteorology.
Yeah. There's radio use. Um, there's history. There's demolitions. And perhaps a little bit more obscurely, there's ballroom dance and origami.
So on this journey, like, does this class the whole journey, or are
The,
you
the,
able to
the,
take
the,
multiple?
these classes are due to be available for the whole journey. Mechanically, you get one int roll per week. If you make that int roll, you get 1d6 percentile in the skill that's being taught. And the whole journey should take about 5 weeks or 5-6 weeks or so.
Okay.
Could you double check the note? I missed the one after, or what's the one after dog sled?
Navigation.
Navigation, thank you. I missed one, but I have them all in the notes.
Before we do the training section, should we be upping our skills that we checked, or are we waiting to a different spot for that?
No, this is a great time, especially once you start getting into the Caribbean, to just sit back, relax, find a deck chair with a good gin and tonic, and do our experience checks.
So if you're looking for them, they are all under the first section of successful rolls as opposed to the second section we just opened up, by the way. Even the psych ones that y'all just did.
I think I've actually checked off my successful ones. By that I mean like all of my 2.
I've checked all
Uh,
of mine, so
I mean, yeah, I don't know what else. You probably rolled something last week or last game, but all I have for you, Stoddard, is spot hidden at the moment.
Pretty much that's what I've succeeded on. I've rolled on it a couple times, and that's all I've succeeded on.
So, yep.
Oh, I did a persuade. You missed a persuade.
I,
So, yep.
of course most of my skills are pretty high, so it'd be hard to get.
So do the skill checks now.
Yes. Yes, I would say so. So the usual roll
Fail
There
above.
we
is
go.
good.
Fail
Yep.
is good. Get a D10 increase.
All right. I failed one. I've never been so happy to fail.
Got
Currently
library use
rolling
up
on
anyway.
persuade to improve.
At
Yeah,
9.
I'm with the dice on this one, Roger. Your driving experience was definitely a learning moment.
Yes,
Ugh.
crashing it through doors, going on a car chase. I really didn't know how to drive.
45 plus 5 and 8
Oops.
is 13, right? Yes. So I go from 45 to 53.
Ooh, look at all that wonderful red ink.
I
Hmm.
mean, I'm pretty used to it, so this is exciting for it to be beneficial. I also, sorry for all the extra rolls. It took me a while to hit the right buttons.
I've been roll.
That is
Um,
that is unfortunate for Susan.
Yeah, I've been rolling super hot right now.
Although to be fair, Roger's critical fighting brawl off of 25 is also fairly.
Unfortunate.
Yeah, timing is a bit off there, I feel.
are
Map
we
repair,
picking? Are we
brawl,
picking
and
the?
throw.
Do we pick? Are we doing the courses now, or does that happen later? Because I don't know how much we're fast
You
forwarding.
get to pick your first week's course.
Okay. So I also put them in the Discord if it's easier to swap back and forth while you look at your sheet.
Well, that worked out.
Okay, so throw goes up, brawl goes up, and that's great. Fantastic. Ugh.
I believe meteorology should be science meteorology, right?
Yes.
Okay. And is radio use same as radio operator?
Yes.
Okay.
So I think that Valentina is going to start with radio operator so she can kind of learn to send back her own stuff.
That's fair. And that is being run by. I believe it is. Louis Laroche, who's the the radio operator.
Um,
Did you say it was an int
make
roll
sure I have
to
this right.
learn?
Yes. And
And
if
it's a
it,
successful int roll to learn.
yes.
I got it, and it was a D6 if I get it.
A D6 indeed.
Okay. Thank you.
Like, part of me is tempted to take the aircraft maintenance or the operate heavy machinery. I'm like, but that's technically what my alt does. So, you know, I can fail at that. I have Arctic survival. That would count for polar in this case.
Yes.
Okay.
So I added 5 to my radio operator, and 3 of my skills went up through skill ups. So
Ooh.
psychology, library use, and listen.
Thinking I'll start working on navigation so we don't get lost.
That seems reasonable.
I think I'm going to do navigate as well on this one. I do have some radio operator. It's about the same, so I'm going to do navigate as well. Because again, wilderness matters a little bit.
Yep. And which is Douglas Halperin, the one of the pilots.
It's a D6, correct? Because I succeeded my
Yes.
int.
Yes.
I gained 1.
Well,
Is ballroom dancing and origami 1 or 2? I assume they're treated separately.
they are separate. Yes. Uh, it is strictly speaking, it's um, yeah, but strictly speaking, it's craft ballroom dance and art origami.
Sure. Well, now I have 8 and 5 in those respectively. Or 8 and 7, rather.
Wasn't this just a single one?
Yes. So I was going to say we only have the 1 week, so
Oh, I apologize. I got ahead of myself.
I put it down wrong. That's also a thing.
yes, the ballroom dancing is led by Dr. Green, esteemed actual ship surgeon.
Updated appropriately, so I just have the boost to ballroom dancing.
And of all people, it's the head of the the mechanics. David Packard, who's of all people doing the origami. It's probably just as well that Starkweather doesn't have to start doing his demolitions training, given the view of the crew on his capabilities. Yeah, maybe not sinking the ship in the Caribbean is a good move.
Priorities.
So, all in all, the first week is pretty much an idyllic life. You round the eastern end of Cuba on September the 15th. Thick green palm frond jungle slides by in silence beyond the rocks, seemingly almost close enough to touch. US four-stacker destroyer salutes you from a distance, and the Gabrielle responds with a triple blast of its steam whistle. That night, the radio announces that Lexington's Tallahassee has arrived in Panama, which is received by Starkweather in angry silence. You spend another 3 days and nights crossing the Caribbean. Swirls of clouds mottle the heavens, dropping brief but frequent rain. Sunrises, sunsets are bursts and explosions of vaporous gold, hints of lilies and distant spice hanging in the air, ever present beneath the tang of the sea. And you make your way into the anchorage at Colon on the morning of September 19th, 1933. And as the lush green shores of Panama close in on either side of the Gabrielle, studded here and there with buildings and grey fortifications, the city of Colon, where the canal enters the Caribbean, seems small and sleepy at the edge of the jungle. Fishing boats float in the waters of the bay, and the grim guns and walls of the forts on either side seem oddly out of place. Captain Vredenberg holds the vessel offshore for most of an hour inside the breakwater, as the canal pilot is brought aboard in a small customs launch flying the American flag. The pilot is a tall, black-skinned Jamaican in his 30s called Quentin. He inspects the ship's documents and proceeds to the bridge. Passing through the Gatun locks takes almost an hour. The ship's engines idle, and off-duty crewmen lounge on the rail watching as the gargantuan water gates approach. There are 2 sets of these, each 150 feet wide, looming 70 feet above the water. A long wharf thrusts out between them hundreds of feet into the channel, decorated along its length with rails and overhead power lines for the squat electric mule engines that are used to pull the vessels through the locks. Small, stout tugs urge the ship into the gaping steel mouth. Then the gates close. There are shouts from the crew. Lines are tossed to men on the pier. Great tow cables are secured to the squat, powerful-looking black locomotive waiting on one side. When the inner gates open and the waters of the lake swirls by, the locomotive thrums and roars and surges forward along steep, crooked tracks, holding the Gabrielle steady against the current and drawing her along. When the gates close behind, the engine rests, only to surge forward again when the water is risen and the next set of doors open. It takes about 15 minutes to raise the ship 30 feet above the level of the sea before she slides once again forward 1,000 foot into the next basin of the lock. The doors behind her close and the water again rises. This repeats a total of 3 times as you climb up. Then the ship is released with a whistle into Lake Gatun. A day's slow, measured progress follows through the lake's still waters, surrounded by thick jungles, passing other ocean-going giants headed for the Atlantic. Brightly colored birds flash in the dense foliage. Alligators sun themselves in great numbers on the shore, and the heavy, sweet smell of decaying plant is strong on the fitful breeze. Signs of men are few. Here, the thin, tall tower of a radio transmitter. There, the fort-like clearing of the Canal Zone Penitentiary. And at last, the Calbria Cut comes into view, a huge, deep slice carved through the surrounding hills. The rough-cut walls goes past for miles, festooned with vines and clinging shrubs, seemingly mere inches away on either side. Then the ship enters another set of locks, this time descending down, crossing the mere mile of Miraflores Lake, and go through the final 2 locks towards the sea. Roads and houses are visible in increasing numbers. Pleasure craft dot the edges of the expanse of water, and black-haired children wave as the Gabrielle passes by. The jungle is cut back, replaced by stretches of green open lawn and careful swaths of brilliant flowers. When you at last move out of the channel and slip into Balboa Bay, up on the upper decks you catch glimpses of the curve of Panama City to the south and the dark, restless expanse of the Pacific beyond. So you end up anchoring up for the night in Balboa Bay. There's a few people that manage to take a little bit of respite and get ashore, but most stay on board since Starkweather wants to move out at first light. So no time for liberty. However, various small ferry craft do come alongside the evening with fresh fruit and fresh water, as well as the odd few luxuries for sale. So souvenirs, cigars, candy, clothing, um, anything else. The grinning locals think that they can earn a US dollar or two for. And then in the morning, there's a cargo barge that brings quantities of uh, fresh fruits that are lowered into number 4 hold. And so on September 21st, you steam south into the Pacific Ocean, and by noon, there is no sign of land. And that is where I think we will call a halt for tonight. So thank you all for watching, and we'll see you on the next part of this journey. Bye now.